Hi, it's Colleen Low with the Born to Be Brave podcast and YouTube channel. Welcome back. We're so excited to have you today. You are going to absolutely love today's guest. Her name is Laurette Smith. And let me tell you about her. Laurette, okay, first of all, I'm in love with Laurette. So you will be in love with her too by the end of this. She's just magnificent, but I'm going to tell you her real official bio. And this is what it is. Laurette is an energy worker and a licensed neuro-linguistic programming associate practitioner and a certified life coach. She specializes in disordered eating and emotional and sexual trauma. Having come from a background of sexual abuse and bulimia, Laurette knows what it feels like to be lost and stuck in disrepair. That is why she is now passionate about helping women reconnect to who they truly are and then allowing that inner glow to heal them from the inside out. Welcome to the program, Laurette.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Colleen.
Oh my gosh, this is such an honor. I'm so excited, you guys. So Laurette and I met in, I think it was Project Next. I don't know what it was, Born for This Live or something.
One of them.
Something with our coach, Maya Komaroda. And I fell in love with her instantly because she's just so effervescent and just radiates beauty and light and positivity. And I can't wait for you to hear her story and then what she's done with her story in her life. And because we don't have control over what happens to us, but we do have control over how we react to it and then how we move forward. So can you share, both of us are in the same book. We're in When Love Speaks book, and it's a collection of stories. And our coach asked each one of us, if you had 2 hours to live, what's the message you want to share with the world? And then also, what's the story attached to that? And I'm going to just ask Laurette to share with you maybe a little bit of a background of you and your story that you shared in the book. And then I know a lot more about you, so I'm going to ask other questions, but I would like to share just start with that. Start with the story you shared.
Yeah, I mean, let's not waste time. Let's just dive in.
Let's just dive right in.
Yeah.
And wait, can I just tell them one more thing about you? That you're a master storyteller. We all had to share our stories, right? Everyone had to share our stories and memorize them. And we were coached by a coach, and they helped us to get better and better at it. And I have to say that Laurette is a master storyteller, and she nailed it. So, okay, here we go. Tell us your story, gorgeous.
So I'm not actually going to recite my story from the book, just give you a bit of background. So I'm actually a New Zealander, so I'm a Kiwi. So I live in Seattle now, but I grew up as the youngest in a family of 5, and a very glowing, energetic, loving 7-year-old. In fact, I was doing energy work when I was 7 years old with people. I've always been very connected to energy. And I knew that my grandfather was a very unhappy man. He had come to live with us because his wife had died. It was my father's father. And so one day I had this freaking brilliant idea that I'm going to go into his room and I'm going to share my light with him. I'm going to make him happy. I walked into his room and I said, Pop, I'm here to make you happy. And he looked at me and he said, if you want to make me happy, then come here. And that was the first day he raped me. When I left his room, my mother was standing there because she knew that I had gone in to speak to him. And she said to me, how did it go? And I said, Pop was really mean to me. And then he yelled at me. And she said to me, well, that's exactly what I expected to happen. What she didn't know is that my grandfather had said to me, your mother has asked me to do this to you, to prove to you that you should not be so happy all the time. So when I left his room and my mother said that, I thought he had told the truth. And I thought my mother was against me. And so my relationship with her broke that day. A couple of days later, I started having blood-curdling nightmares, and my mother would come and sit on my bed. She had no idea what had happened to me. I didn't know that. I thought she had ordered it. And for the next 3 years, my grandfather kept raping me and molesting me. My mother used to send me to his room on errands, and I thought she was sending me there with the intention of doing what she had told him to do. I died inside. Everything changed about me. I didn't tell my parents, I didn't talk to them about it until I was 31 years old. And they had no idea. My mother said that she had been praying for years for God to show her what had happened to me when I was 7 and why I had changed so dramatically, almost overnight, and that why she had lost her daughter. And so while it was painful for them to hear it, for her, it made sense finally. I mean, he had been dead for a long time. He died when I was 11 years old, but I kept that secret inside of me because I thought all of my family knew. I mean, there's a lot more to it with my siblings. I thought all of my siblings knew. In fact, in the book, I talk about one night when I hid under my sister's bed because I used to hide from my grandfather. And it was actually a night that my sister had gone away to stay at friend's house. And so I slept in her bed that night and woke up in the middle of the night with him standing over me. And he raped me. He left the room, and I spent the night hiding under her bed in the dust, which I'm an asthmatic. And so for an asthmatic, hiding in the dark in the dust under a bed is a big deal. I don't feel a lot of the feelings now that I had back then because I have worked through them and resolved them, but I still see the images and have so much compassion for myself and for what I went through as a kid. So that's my background. It's a very heavy way to start the podcast.
Well,
that's where I've come from.
I mean, it is heavy. It's a lot. And I think though that it's it gives people a clue to what you've overcome. And I think that the rest of the podcast will be so much more meaningful to people because when we're sharing about all of the things that you've done to overcome and to become the person you are today, because today I'm very drawn to you. I think you're one of my heroes, and I think you're amazing. And I think I see greatness in you. And I know that as people, as our listeners and our watchers are listening to the rest of this interview, they're just going to be in awe of the journey of who you become. And I think that when we have extreme stories, I think, and like you kept it a secret until you were 31. Mm-hmm. First of all, thank you for sharing that with us. It is heavy, it's powerful, but thank you for sharing your story, because I do feel like our stories connect us to humanity. Yeah. And there's other people who are listening to us who are sexual abuse survivors who need to hear your story, who your story is going to help them process their life in a more joyful way, and they're going to have more peace because of this interview. And I feel like my goal is the reason I started the podcast is because I've been through hell, my own hell. And I think all of us, no one escapes. We all have different things that are difficult for us. And I want to take buckets of water back to the people still consumed by the flames. And so I know that a lot of people don't talk about sexual abuse. Mm-hmm. And I have chills when I hear your story still. And I just think, how did you go from that to the childhood you grew up with to where you are? Like, what are some of the first steps in the healing process, and to maybe peeling away the layers of traumatic stress that happened to you? Can you share with us, if someone's listening, what are some of the strategies and tools? What are the first steps you took?
I would say one of the very first things I did, it's going to start off sounding kind of depressing, but it ended up really amazing. I I won't go into the whole backstory of this, but for reasons, I slept in my bathroom, our master bathroom, for 3 years on the floor. My husband slept in bed, and that's a whole story that I won't go into. And I slept in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And every night I was bulimic. At the time, every night I tried to find a reason not to kill myself. And one night, the suicidal ideation and the self-hatred had become so severe that I saw a vision of my suicide, and I saw a vision of my oldest son finding me the next morning, and I saw a vision of my funeral. And I knew that I had to do something because I was not actually going to survive much longer, like extreme PTSD, extreme survival mode. And there was one time my husband went in to pick up a red box, the red box machines.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a knife out of the glove box and started trying to carve up my arm. And fortunately, the knife was very blunt. So I was only able to scratch myself. And it was actually that night that I was in the bathroom, on the bathroom floor again. And I knew I needed to do something to rescue myself because therapy was not working for me. And so I got up and I looked at myself in the mirror. And normally the way that I talk to myself in the mirror in the evening was pretty vicious and pretty murderous. And this night I looked in the mirror and I just asked myself a question that kind of started changing my life, which was just, what do you feel? And I'd never asked myself that question before, and I became curious. And I'm like, what do I feel? I feel ravaged. And I thought, wow, that's how I feel. And so I got onto my favorite piece of technology the next day, which is Google image search. And I typed the word ravaged, and I looked for a picture of what that looked like. And I found the picture and began working with the picture. I had no idea at this stage that that's actually part of neurolinguistic programming practice. I did it kind of intuitively. And it started helping me take steps to walk out of where I was, because when I had an image, I was able to embrace the way that I was feeling and start to validate it and start to see myself. And then there were so many steps. Oh my gosh, so many steps. Visiting my grandfather's grave and reading out a letter of acceptance and forgiveness for him. I have nothing but kindness in my heart for my grandfather. There is no blame. There is no judgment in my heart at all for him, just compassion for how hurting he was. And then, as you know, in my story, it all came to a head in 2019, actually, when I visited New Zealand and I took my son, Grayson, he's just a gorgeous kid, into the glowworm caves in New Zealand. And I won't tell the story now because it's in the book, but we ended up sitting in pitch black, 90 feet under the earth. And it was while I was sitting in that darkness, which was terrifying because I used to hide from my grandfather in the dark. I was terrified of the dark. But as the glowworms started to come out, it just made me realize there is beautiful light waiting for us in the darkness. We just need to have the bravery, the courage to sit there and allow our light to find us. I feel like we spend so much of our time searching for our life force, for our light, for our spirit, for what energizes us. And we just don't need to, because when we learn to sit and feel, that part of us actually shows herself and we start to see who we actually are. And that was like a life-changing day for me. And it's just been a journey since then of rediscovering myself and discovering who I actually am. Like, there has been, my grandfather is just part of the trauma that I've experienced. I had decades more. Every single step, I wouldn't change a thing. I'm just so full of gratitude for it, because it's brought me to where I am today, to have such a deep understanding of the pain in the world. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And having been in the dark for so many decades, the word intoxicated comes to mind. I'm not sure if that's the right word to use.
Oh, that's a good word to describe you.
Yes, so intoxicated with the life force that I have, with the energy that I have, with the light that I have, that I refuse to ever let it be shadowed in again.
Yeah, you exude light and beauty and goodness. That's my opinion.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Yeah. So let's talk just for a minute let's talk about bulimia and eating disorders. It's something that you struggled with for a long time.
35 years.
Yeah, 35 years is a long time. And I know that most of us have a very unhealthy relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
And I took your class, and I would highly recommend, well, at the end we'll tell you, but I would highly recommend you take her classes. I would highly recommend you follow her, join her group, and her class is life-changing. I just signed up to be nice because I was in love with her and I thought she was so cute. And I thought I would just hang out in her class for a little bit and do other stuff. And I was so mesmerized by it. And I learned so much about my relationship with food. And up until then, I was an emotional eater. And, it's interesting is that I had a very traumatic event happen in our house just 2 days ago. And I usually eat a pint of Ben & Jerry's ice cream to self-soothe myself. I think you told me I don't self-soothe. It's called something else. I don't know. Anyway, it's a coping mechanism for me, right? And and I was grocery shopping last night, and I went down the ice cream aisle to get vanilla ice cream to go with our Christmas dinner with the pies. And I walked right by the Ben & Jerry's. I didn't even care. It was like the craziest thing.
It's amazing. Oh my God, I love it.
Is that the craziest thing? And the event happened on Tuesday, the traumatic event here at our house, right? And today is Thursday that we're recording this podcast and this YouTube interview. And it's interesting that not once have I thought, oh, I should get some chocolate or something sweet, or I need to go immediately to the grocery store and get some ice cream. It was very freeing. I didn't even know that I wasn't thinking about it until I was walked down the aisle. And when I was looking for the vanilla, I was like, oh my gosh, there's the Ben & Jerry's. I didn't even think about getting Ben & Jerry's ice cream. It was freeing. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. So tell us about.
I love that.
Isn't that crazy? And that's because of you. Like, I took that class. So I did the class, and literally it was amazing. It was mind blowing because I know you know so much about it. But most of us, if people are listening right now, and let's just say they're not bulimic or anorexic, and maybe they are, maybe they're secretly, I think people hide that too, right?
Yeah.
But let's just say you have a really unhealthy relationship with food, alcohol, whatever it is that we're self-medicate with. What can people do besides taking your class? I think they should all take it, but what else can they do? And what is the name of your class? Tell everyone really quick, and then tell us about what can people do about that?
Well, the name of the program I run is called Food Peace, because that's what we really want to do, is make peace with food. It's interesting because we have these coping mechanisms, actually they're beautiful survival skills in our life, and we're so desperate to get rid of them and push them away. And so what I did, so I became bulimic in my 40s. I'd had an eating disorder since I was 17 years old, but I didn't become bulimic until my 40s. And towards the end of my journey, I was only eating. I ate on a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and would throw everything up. And then I would eat again on a Wednesday and throw everything up, and I didn't eat for the rest of the week. So I was doing intermittent fasting, which, if you have any issues with bulimia, anorexia, severe yo-yo dieting, intermittent fasting is not for you. Just trust me, it will so mess you up. I was kind of intermittent eating. So my body had stopped drawing nutrients from food. My body forgot how to digest food because, I would eat until I was absolutely chocker. And so my stomach and my body felt full, and then I would throw it all up and my body was empty. So I really messed my metabolism up. It's taken me a couple of years to heal it. But what we want to do is push that tactic away. I don't actually believe in pushing things away. I believe that skill that we use, that survival skill, is a gift that our brain has given us to cope with what's going on in our lives, to keep us sane, to help us make sense of the world, to make us feel safe. when we see it in a different way and we start to embrace it, I know it sounds weird to embrace it, but that's when you can start to heal it and follow a strategic plan to help you heal your body and heal what's going on. Because so often we sign up for a diet or some type of health program and we go in this restriction phase. And I'm sure you guys know, if you restrict and you lose weight, then it's like, why aren't I happy? And so you start eating again, and then you're like, oh crud, I've gained all the weight back. So then you go to another program and another program and another program, and it never ever works. And it's because we're so desperate to push the thing away, but we don't replace it with anything else. And so the first step in my program is figuring out, helping everybody create an individualized menu, because everybody is different, of what is safe for you to eat, where your scary foods are. And then the second part is helping you to create activities in your life that can replace food, because that's really important. And you have both of those things set up so that you can start to work on the emotions. Because when you go on a diet or you join a program, there's this part of you over here that desperately needs that skill for survival. And when you don't account for that part, take care of that part, she's going to get bigger at some stage and she's going to take over again. And so we want to learn to account for our emotions and deal with them in a way that actually resolves them so that they don't come back. And when I actually learned how to do that in one day.
One day?
Basically, in one day, I resolved my emotional eating, because I learned an entirely new way to speak to myself. Like my inner voice, as I was saying before, was so vicious and so ugly and so murderous. I used to look in the mirror at nighttime and slap myself across the face and tell myself how hideous and ugly and revolting and what a curse of a person I was. When I learned to deal with that voice differently, it literally changed overnight. And then self-sabotage, dealing with self-sabotage as well. Self-sabotage gets such a bad rap. It's literally a roadmap to exactly what you need to heal in your life. It's not something to have any shame. And that judgment, no, we don't want any judgment about anything. Judgment is never useful. We observe the judgment, but then we put it aside and we figure out what to do. Self-sabotage is actually a really amazing gift that our brain gives us to show us where we need healing. It's not coming to sabotage our progress. It's coming to help us. And when women start to see that, it's really life-changing for them. I mean, I've had women that I've coached that have been bulimic for 60 years, completely resolved. I had an anorexic in my program, completely resolved. I've had women with just binge eating issues, emotional eating issues. When you learn how to see yourself differently and how to speak to yourself differently, and then how to be smart and strategic with everything, the game really begins to change very, very, very quickly. And I don't understand why more people aren't teaching this. And of course, I weave neurolinguistics through the whole thing and energy work through the whole thing, because those are two really important components of my approach as well. But it's really exciting for me, after coming from 35 freaking years, for myself to be free and to help other women achieve freedom in that area as well. It's liberating. And you know what it's like, Colleen, when you help somebody out of the pain that you've experienced in your life, there's nothing like it. And you just want to do it more and more and more and more.
Yeah, it is the best feeling when you help people. And you know, what's crazy is there's two things you said there. It really does free you. What you teach, like, it's not like people try everything, right? Because they're so consumed with weight loss. It's a huge industry. It's on the top of our minds. You know, everyone's thinking about, or not everyone, but most people are, right? And literally, I didn't even think about it when I went down that ice cream aisle, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about getting ice cream. And I sat with my pain, right? Instead of stuffing down the pain, right? I reached out to help from our group and get, you know, it's interesting. Like you said, there's a couple of things you said. You said self-sabotage is a gift, right? That we can learn from. And there's so many, you know, I love Laurette so much. I was in the car with Laurette, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. And I even asked her if I could record her in the car so I could I've listened to you talk like 3 times, you know, to get
That's
more.
so gorgeous.
to get more and more tips, because the other thing she said that you might have glossed over because she said it, and I just want to bring us back to this, is that the brain wants to keep you safe and the brain wants to make sense of things. And that is so important when you're processing food, whether it's food, peace with your food or emotional eating or whatever stressors you have in your life. When you realize, can you explain about why does the brain want to keep you safe, and why does the brain want to keep things copacetic and make sense of things, and how does that impact our lives? Because I'm telling you that I've listened to you talk about that on that recording quite a few times. So please share with us, because you guys are going to be blown away. This woman's brilliant.
So our emotional brain, our amygdala, is the part of our brain that stores our memories. And of course, it's where our emotions come from. Hence, it's called our emotional brain. Its primary goal in life is to keep us safe. Our brain will feel safe. It is its goal. So whether you feel safe because you have safety inside of you and nobody can make you unsafe, whether you have safety because you are relying on another person to provide that safety in your life, or whether you're using some type of substance with it, or anything, shopping, going out and shopping can make you feel safe. Your brain gives you that drive and that gift so that you feel safe. Once you have that feeling of unsafe and your emotional brain will start to freak out, oh my gosh, I feel unsafe. What happens is that your brain will actually trigger a craving for that behavior. So for me, it was a huge bag of sour cream and onion Lays. And I loved them mixed with peanut M&Ms. Like I'd have one of each and put them in my mouth. It was the perfect combo for me. That's what and a glass of red wine. That's what would make me feel safe. And I wouldn't even know what was happening. Suddenly the chips were open and I was stuffing them in my mouth as fast as I could. And I would shame and blame myself for it. But no, we don't need to do that, because again, our amygdala, which is where our limbic system sits, remember, survival, safety, will produce the craving for exactly the behavior that we need in order to achieve that safety. And so what we need to do is start to create space between the trigger, the situation, the emotion, the person, whatever it is coming in, and the limbic system firing off the craving. And that's part of what we do in a program. That's part of neurolinguistics does. That's part of, as you were saying, allowing yourself to sit with the pain, which sounds absolutely terrifying. It's not as bad. It's never as bad as it sounds, and yes, you can cry, but there are certain things that you can do to help move that along. But that's where it's amazing, because it helps women to start remove the shame from the behavior and start saying, oh, my brain's just concerned with safety. What a beautiful gift my brain has given me. Let me embrace this gift and let me start to create the space and choose another path. But making sense of the world is one of my favorite things to talk about, because we have this map of the world in our brain that gets developed as we are growing up, and we operate. It's like if you're looking through a lens, we operate through that lens. Like anybody who greets us in public, any of our friends, they see us through the lens of the way that they view the world, which, by the way, means that we can be whoever we want, because we can't change somebody else's lens, so we get to be free to be ourselves. But the way that I discovered this was I was 47 years old at the time, so it had been 40 years since my grandfather started raping me. As is the case with almost everybody that is either abused, molested, raped, beaten as a child, they blame themselves, right? It's just what happens. So I had been blaming myself for 40 years, and I didn't just blame myself for that. I blamed myself for every single thing that happened in life, because that's the way that my map in my brain got set up, is blame. It's always my fault. I'm a curse of a person. One of the reasons I wanted to commit suicide was because I became convinced that I was a walking disease that was going to ruin my children's lives and they would be better off without me. And so I sat down on my bedroom floor one morning, 47 years old, and I decided to speak to blame. And I thanked it for being there. And I said, okay, blame, why are you in my life? What are you trying to show me? And immediately I got the answer, because at 7 years old, I was who I am now, just this incredibly alive, energetic, beautiful, loving little girl. And then my grandfather entered my life, and like my life fell apart. I just like everything changed for me. So my brain decided to give me this gift of self-blame. And oh, yes, if I'm to blame, that somehow makes sense to me. That gift of blame kept me sane for 40 years. I mean, I was able to homeschool my children during that time, which I could never have done had I not blamed myself. So here I am sitting on my bedroom floor, and I'm like, oh my gosh, blame is a gift. And I became so grateful for that blame. But you can't stop there, because then I'm like, okay, blame, I love you. I'm so grateful for you. This is amazing. But do I still need you to make sense of the world? It's like, well, no, I'm 47 years old now. I understand adult choices. I understand adult accountability. I understand adult responsibility. I no longer need blame to help me make sense of the world. And immediately the whole concept of blame just left my being, and I stopped blaming myself for everything. And that's the day that I understood that our brain has to put things in boxes in order for us to make sense of the world. Sense and safety are the two main things that we are driven by. Does that answer that question? Is that too
Yes.
complicated of an answer?
Oh my gosh, it's brilliant. Yes, because the first time I'd ever heard of that was with you, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense about it's a primal instinct to make sense of things and to keep you safe. But we're not, no bear's going to come attack you, or a lion, right? And so, yeah, and then when we can thank the blame, thank the right, and the blame, and you homeschooled your kids, and you were a fantastic homeschooler. Didn't you write your own curriculum for your kids?
Yes, not math. I did not write math curriculum, and I wrote science for one of my kids all the way through, but I did not write science for my two older kids from ninth grade. They did curriculum, but everything else I designed and wrote. I loved it.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have done that without your blame.
Nope. I think I would have gone off the deep end, to be honest. So yeah, becoming grateful for those survival skills, for those survival strategies, those tactics is a game changer. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is a huge game changer, because when we spoke, you and I spoke when we were here in California, and I was sharing that every day I would tell myself that I wasn't going to go home from the hospital and get the Ben and Jerry's at Ralph's, by the grocery store by my house, and I get a banana. And every day I would say, I'm not going to do it today. But then every day on the way home from the hospital, I stopped at Ralph's and I got one pint, and then I got a banana, and then I would slice up the banana and then put the ice cream, and then I would eat the whole pint, of course, And then the next day I would say, I'm not going to do that. This is the last time I'm ever going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day I would do it all over again, and it's just interesting that as soon as I took your class, and then we were talking, and you say, when you just think that was that was your coping skill. You did great, Colleen. Congratulations. Like,
mm-hmm.
oh my gosh, I never thought about it. Like, congratulations.
Yeah.
I survived.
yeah. It's a beautiful thing. And as I was saying before, we don't want to push it away.
Yeah.
If you push something away and resist it, it just grows. So why not try a completely new way that is actually effective? Yeah. Yay.
It is effective. Yay. Okay, here's another thing that I loved from listening to you in the car is
that was so much fun, by the way. I mean, I just couldn't stop talking. I had an absolute blast.
Wasn't it great?
So much fun. Oh my God, it was so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, for those of you joining us, we had a global book launch in Los Angeles for the When Love Speaks book that our coach Maya Komaroda put together. And we drove home from the hotel back to Long Beach area together. And it was so fun. And in the car, one of the other things that you said that was just so fascinating to me that I hope you'll dissect for us and dig into is that the difference between a lot of people talk about limiting beliefs and then you don't believe in limiting beliefs.
Nope.
And you believe in paradigms. And I've really been studying the brain because I do believe the brain is the key to everything and understanding our brain and how it works, our mind brain. And it is so funny that the book I'm reading talks about everything in your life. It totally supports what you were saying about everything in your life is through the paradigm that you process it. It has nothing to do with limiting beliefs, even though people say that there's limiting beliefs. So can you share the difference between like limiting beliefs and paradigms?
So limiting belief, well, first of all, I just find it, I can't think of another word other than kind of insulting, that our brain would come up with something that limits us, because our brain is concerned with safety, not with limiting us. And so I think it's become such a popular term in modern culture. If you've got to, come and get rid of your limiting beliefs. And there is a little bit of truth to it, but I have such an aversion, because I believe that every belief that our brain comes up with is here to help us. Like the fact that I believed that my grandfather, or that it was my fault what my grandfather did, that wasn't a limiting belief. That was a helpful belief. Did it need to be updated? Yes. But if I had tried to cast it out as a limiting belief, or tried to, I also don't believe in affirmations, tried to use an affirmation to replace it, it wouldn't have worked. It was in the embracement of it. Embracement, is that a word?
I don't know.
It was an embracing it. It was an embracing it, and then allowing it to update. It completed its task, and then I update it. That's where the change happens. The map in our brain that I was talking about before, that's the paradigm, the lens that we look through, the way that we see the world. Those are our paradigms. And they're built from our childhood, and we can't go back and change what happened in our childhood, right? It's impossible, because one of the other things that I do with women is I help them reprogram their memories, because when you reprogram a memory, it updates that map in your brain, and you begin to see things in new ways and create new paradigms. We don't change the facts, but we change the way, and I don't do hypnosis, it's all through neurolinguistics, change the way that the memory actually sits in the emotional brain, so it starts to project a different paradigm. Actually, I'll show you, I bring this out all the time. This is a kaleidoscope, right?
Yeah.
So if you think of a kaleidoscope, and all the beads in the end are all the facts of your childhood, all the things that have happened to you in your whole life, right? You can't change them. You can't change it. And you look through and you get a picture. And then, I hope this isn't too noisy, but when you begin to change the way that the lens sits with the facts, you look through it and you get an entirely new picture of your life. It's like it's one of the simplest object lessons that I was taught. And so I use it all the time now as well, because it helps people understand I'm not changing the facts. I'm changing the way that my perspective sits with it. And then you start to build a whole new picture of your life. And it's not this concept that I hear all the time in culture of, and I know I'm not judging it. I don't find it useful, but I'm not judging it, because I know people are so well-meaning. But I don't know if you've heard the saying, oh, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you.
Yeah, I say that.
Okay.
So let's hear it so I can understand, because I learned so much from you. Bring it on, girlfriend.
Yeah, so it frustrates me a little bit, because I feel that it is I find it an invalidating statement, because it's like you can say something, well, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And somebody will say, oh, right, yes, of course, bring it on. Whereas I find it so much more effective to sit with somebody in compassion and just sit and listen. No instruction, no forcing them to change their paradigms. When you sit in your pain and you feel it, like you were saying before, the shifts start to come internally once you begin to open your eyes and see yourself and see your own light and your own energy force. That's when the shifts begin to happen. They come from deep inside. They're not forced. They're not an affirmation. They are something about the way that the memory sits in your emotional brain that starts to project a different paradigm. There's so much more I could say. Oh my gosh, I have so much.
I want to hear it.
I have so much racing through my brain. So, but I can. Do you want me to go on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's why we're here.
I love this stuff so much. And I know we talked about this in the car because we have our emotional brain and then we have our thinking brain, our prefrontal cortex, which is kind of the whole affirmations part of it, and all the strategies and all the tactics. And strategies and tactics are amazing. We can't change without them, right? But you need to get the two parts of your brain to combine. You need to get your rational brain and your emotional brain to become friends, which is where a lot of programs fail, so that you can actually march forward into new territory and make the changes that are lifelong. Like food has absolutely no hold on me anymore. 35 years, and I can't even believe that I can say this. But there's a trick. This weedy part of the brain that sits between the two of them, and it's called the nucleus accumbens. This part of your brain is associated with curiosity and with play. The only way basically you can grow this part of your brain is through play, which is why a child is so freaking curious about the world, because they're always engaged in play. What do we do as adults?
Too serious.
We suck at playing. And so the nucleus accumbens starts to shrink. The reason that this is important is because this part of your brain is the part that helps your rational thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, to become open to new ways of thinking, to become open to new paradigms, to enter new territories in your brain. And the only way you can access that is through curiosity, which means we just need to play a whole lot more. And which is why at 50 years old, I was still bulimic at the time. I started taking ballet classes because I knew I needed to engage in some kind of play. I only did ballet for about 1.5 years. I'm very flexible, except in my lower back, and you have to have a flexible lower back for ballet. So I was leaving class in tears, and I'm like, you know what, this is just not fun anymore. What I did find was fun was putting on my ballet gear. Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. I can't believe.
No, I can't wait to hear it.
I would put on my ballet gear, including my ballet slippers, and I would set up the tripod and take photos of myself in ballet poses, take photos of myself in stretching poses, laughing my head off.
That's what a kid would do.
Yeah. And it changed my life. It changed my life. And I've had women who I don't even know what play is anymore. So if there's any of you that are in that state where you're like, I don't even know how to play, please use my favorite software, piece of technology, browser, whatever you call it. Go to Google Images and type in children at play and look at the images and find something that looks fun and friggin' try it. Or go to the grocery store and get a little thing of bubbles, the old blow containers.
Yeah.
Blow bubbles around your room and dance in them. Try twirling, try anything that starts to grow this piece of your brain with fun, with curiosity, so that your brain, once you start to resolve the memories, the way they sit, once you start to resolve the emotions, once you start to make friends with your inner voice, once you start to effectively use self-sabotage and you combine it with play, that's when you become open to new paradigms. And that's what's so different about the approach that I use, because there's a lot of fun involved in it. And fun is I play every freaking day. It's fun.
You are one of the most fun people I know.
It's just, after a lifetime of seriousness, it's amazing to just get to play.
Yeah. I think that when people are stressed out or they're in trauma, if they do something fun, they've done scans, people's brains, that part expands and it reduces their stress.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Being more fun.
Yeah. And when you're in a trauma response, it is very, very difficult to play. I've had panic attacks that last 4 hours where I'm just in a fetal position and just totally concerned with survival. That happened to me I had extreme PTSD and panic disorder for years. I had therapists, really encouraging therapists, who would say to me, I don't understand how you're still alive. I'm like, wow, that's encouraging, isn't it? And so learning, yeah, I know, learning to play was a fundamental part of it. And it's really important to have strategies that you can fall on when you're in that fight, flight, freeze mode. And the more you practice it, the more your brain is going to offer it to you as an alternate strategy. If you think of like a deck of cards, and if you only use the top few cards and then put them on the back of on this top of the pile,
Yeah.
the next time you go to the card deck, which cards are you going to pick up? The same ones, right? That's what our brain is like with our coping strategies, like Ben and Jerry's ice cream, right? When we use that again and again and again, our brain, I would say our brain is lazy, and I do feel like that she or he is kind of lazy, but I know efficient is a much more gracious word. Our brain gets the message. Oh, hey, this is what helps you. Guess what? I'm going to help you out. Path of least resistance, and I'm going to offer the strategy to you again and again and again and again. And the more we use it, the more it gets stuck on that card deck. And so we want to practice these different strategies and skills over and over again when we are not in a trauma response, when we're not stressed out. So our brain starts to get the message, oh, you like this? I'm going to offer this one to you next time. And that's one of the things that starts to get that space in our brain between the feeling or the emotion, the trigger coming in, and our limbic system firing off the unhelpful, I'm not going to say negative, the unhelpful behavior that really is truly not loving toward us, right? Because it always hurts us afterwards. So that's one of the reasons why play is just such a vital, necessary, important part of recovery in any area of your life. And it's fun. Who doesn't want to have fun? Fun's amazing.
Yeah. And I don't know how we moved away from it. You know, when we were kids, we were fantastic. Literally, when you were a kid, putting your ballet clothes on or your favorite outfits and taking pictures of each other or whatever, that was very normal. Or here, let's go pose here or do that or whatever, right? And then as an adult, it's like, oh, that seems kind of weird, but it isn't weird. Why can't we just go have fun and use our imaginations? And
everything just gets so serious, like twirling. I twirled in public the other day in a car park with Christmas choppers around, but there was gorgeous music on, and I'm just like, I don't care. I want to twirl. So I just put my arms out and twirled. Why not? And it made me feel so alive and so grateful to be alive.
I saw that. I'm glad you went and twirled. I love that. You know, somebody posted about dancing in the rain, and it really changed my perspective, because when it started, it's raining right now here where I am, which it very rarely rains. But before I read the post from our group in our Facebook group about someone went and danced in the rain and they were all excited, and then Maya went and danced in the rain. And I'm like, that's crazy. Why would you do that and get all wet? And that is just a story we tell ourselves. And now it's like, oh, the rain, it's great. I don't care if I get a little. I went paddleboarding in the rain this morning. It was like in the 50s or 40s and it was raining, and I'm on my paddleboard. And a year ago, I would have never done that, you know?
Yeah. And isn't it just so liberating? Didn't it make you feel amazing?
Yeah. And there was no one there. There was 2 other cars in the parking lot, right? And I have the whole ocean and the bay to myself, right? No one's there. And it's just like, I was actually singing on my paddleboard today, because it was just like, oh my gosh, there's no one here, right? No boats, no people.
That's wonderful. What were you singing?
I was singing in the rain. I was just like singing in the rain. I'm not really good singer.
Amazing. I love it.
Singing in the rain.
Yay.
And then and then I cried a little, you know, and then I yelled and screamed and let out some stuff. And then I sang again, singing in the rain. Even the people in their houses probably think I'm crazy, you know, because there's the houses on both sides of the bay where I paddle.
Right. Yeah. But who cares what they think if it's
I don't care.
Yeah. It's just expelling emotions, and emotions are simply energy. It's literally, the word is from the Latin for energy in motion, emotion. It's all they are. They need to move. They want to move. And they move with us when we start to work with them properly. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think we got to let go of so many of the things that we hold on to that are just really limiting our fun and joy in life, because I think having more joy is just so good, and letting out. Like if you feel sad, cry. If you feel mad, belt it out.
Yeah, I agree.
Get it out. Yeah, all the things we're taught when we're young, they're not so.
Yeah. Okay, so I got to tell you something about anger, because I used to be very scared of anger. And my husband used to be a very angry man. He's angry for decades. And so I was very scared of anger. And so I was scared to feel it myself. So I had a conversation with anger and I said, okay, anger, I understand you're an emotion, which means you're here to help me and you're here to give me information. What purpose do you serve in my life? And again, immediately I got the answer. The only reason, and let me preface this by saying I thought that I was worth nothing. I thought I hated myself. I thought I had no self-esteem. But what I realized was that the only reason I feel anger is because I believe somebody has violated me in some way. And then I'm like, wait, the only reason I would feel violated is if I actually love myself and think I'm amazing. And then I'm like, wait. Anger tells me that I love myself. And I was like, I mean, I've got chills now.
Me too.
Yeah. And I have felt differently about anger since that day. Changed my life. Yeah. It was an incredible moment. Again, I was just sitting on my bed. This is a different day, but I've had a lot of epiphanies sitting on my bedroom floor. I'm really short, so I sit on the floor a lot. And I have a lot of conversations with myself on the floor. So that was another one I had with another really powerful moment that changed my perspective in one moment, and it never went back again. Yeah.
You talked about, you asked yourself some questions. I think we talked about this in the car too. How important is it to ask yourself questions?
Oh, it changes everything. But you need to be careful. It's more helpful to ask questions in a certain way. So what I tell my woman, gentle, quiet, curious questions. And the way that I preface this with them is to say, and I don't know if I told you this during the class that we did together. I don't remember if I shared this. I think I might have, but imagine you're in the back of a supermarket and there's a little girl that's lost her mummy and she's crying. You think about the tone of voice that you would use with her, right? You would use gentle tone. You would use a quiet tone. Oh, darling, have you lost your mummy? Can I help you? Right?
Yeah.
Right? You would use that type of tone. That's the tone you want to use with your emotions. You also don't, I would encourage you to not use the word why. Why did you do that? Why is a question that will immediately put your emotional brain into defensive mode. She concerned with safety. She get her defenses up and you're going to be shut out. It's what? How questions. How are you feeling? How are you helping me? What do you need right now is one of the most powerful questions you can ask yourself, because truly all the answers that we have are inside of us. Yes, we need outside help to help us piece everything together and to teach us how to ask those questions. But when somebody just tells you things like, this is your answer, a true coach will guide you through the questioning process so you find the answer inside of yourself. Remember, the shifts come internally, and that's when things actually change for you. It's like, do you fish? What's that saying? Do you give a man a fish or do you teach him how to fish? Yeah, that saying. That's the concept. Yeah. So yeah, asking yourself questions is everything, but why questions are not helpful. And if you find yourself asking, like the question I used to ask myself is, why did you do that, you stupid woman? It's not very helpful. It's not going to get me a very helpful answer. It would drive me to emotional eating, right?
Yeah.
And so if you hear why in your brain, you hear yourself start to find the why, you can just put your hand on the back of your head very gently and rephrase. In fact, it's one other thing to mention, because, you know, we have this reptilian brain that's concerned with survival, and it's where the fight flight response comes from. And, you know, a lot of people talk about the reptilian brain. Yes, we have the reptilian brain, but we're not reptiles, we're mammals. We have a mammalian brain as well. And so, like, if we have a child, for example, who is sick, what do? Well, they're upset, or they've come in, we rub their shoulders, right?
Mm-hmm.
We engage their mammalian brain instinctively as nurturers, as parents, which helps their fight flight response ease off and release, right? And come back into their body, into the moment, and soothe their emotions. We can do the same with us. You can engage your mammalian brain. You can, you know, stroke your shoulder blades. You can rub your arms. You can do anything, and it will engage your mammalian brain, help your fight flight response settle down. I have no idea why no therapists told me that. I don't even remember how I discovered it, actually. I don't remember how I discovered it, but it was a game changer for me as well.
So we can soothe ourselves,
Yeah.
touch ourselves and help ourselves calm down.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much easier than sitting here and judging ourselves for engaging in our survival tactics, right? Like, I can't believe you did it again. You're such a screw up. Tomorrow is going to be different. Not going to do it tomorrow. And you wake up with the best of intentions. And for me, it was by 4 o'clock. It's like, oh, you know what? Stuff this day. I'm just going for it. I need to feel safe. I need to feel happy. Hey, I'll be the party mum, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it all goes out the window. And there's such a beautiful and gentle way to deal with it that does not include punishing and judging yourself and then forcing yourself into patterns of behavior that this emotional part of you is going to react to. Yeah, because we want to care for all parts, or in fact, all 4 areas of self-care we want to engage in, so we're caring for ourselves completely.
What are the 4 areas of self-care?
Mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Most people just think about physical self-care. I'm going to go for a facial. Oh my God, I love facials so much. I haven't had one for a while, but I'm going to go for a facial. I'm going to go for a massage. I'm going to eat. I'm going to exercise. All these things that we do are physical self-care. Or we'll think, well, I'll do a little bit of emotional self-care. I'll journal, or I'll talk to a friend. And emotional self-care is like so much deeper than that. But often we neglect spiritual and mental self-care as well. And you really need to be hitting all 4 areas, and you can do it you can do it all at the same time. And that's one of the things that I specifically help women design, is how to hit all of those things so that they're caring for themselves completely. Because when you're caring for yourselves completely, you don't actually need to engage in intentional self-care, because it just becomes a habit, which is when it's just so delicious and yummy and beautiful. Yeah.
I love that over time, it just becomes a habit and part of who you are. And when you're doing self-care, you're choosing yourself.
Yeah. Yes. And we all need to choose ourselves. Yep.
Yeah. It's when we choose ourselves, it makes a huge, huge difference. Can you tell me about intuition too? Because I know you know a lot about intuition.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. So intuition and energy are one of my favorite. It is my absolute favorite.
That's so funny. My next question was going to be on energy. So you can just take them both.
So I'm licensed in neurolinguistics. I've been through life coach training, but my favorite area to work in is with energy and intuition. And so, for example, when I am working with somebody and they have brought up a very painful memory, and I work with emotional abuse, I work with sexual trauma, and I intuitively step into that memory with them and help them move the memory, not change what happened. We never change what happened. That is bullcrap. I remember a therapist trying to go back into a memory with me and change what happened. And I'm like, how is my thinking brain going to accept this? This is not logical, right? It has to be logical for it to work. And so intuitively, I just feel pulled to what is the next step for them to take to start to walk towards a place where the memory, the emotion can resolve. And when the memory and the emotion resolves, it sits in a brain in a new way, and of course gives us a new paradigm, because we're engaging in play, and then it enters our prefrontal cortex, new territory, new paradigm. It's all the system that we go through. And so intuition is like, and I'm just naturally intuitive. I've been this way since I was in fact, when I was 7 years old, my intuition would, I know this is going to sound terrible in this day and age, but this is the early 70s in New Zealand. It was super safe. So it's not like one of those weird children that didn't have any boundaries and would go and hug strangers on the street. But I'd be walking down the street with my mother, and I would intuitively know when somebody needed to know something, and I would walk across the street and speak to a total stranger and hug them. And I know today that actually sounds kind of creepy, but at 7 years old, my energy, my intuition would pull me towards those people. One of my best friends, this is going to sound creepy as well, but it's not, was a 28-year-old man. His name was Peter. He had been in a motorbike accident, and he had severe brain damage. And the church we went to used to have very long Sunday night meetings, and I didn't even sit with my parents. I would go and sit up the front. I'm 7 years old, and when anybody went down for prayer at the end of the service, I would actually go and stand with them and pray with them. Super weird 7-year-old. Every single Sunday night towards the end, Peter would come and he would just throw himself down like in front of the stage and cry out to God for healing, because he couldn't talk properly. He's a very tall man, couldn't talk properly. His whole life had been destroyed. Guess who would go and wail and cry and pray with him for like 20 minutes?
You.
My whole family would have to wait until I was done working people's energy at 7 years old. Unfortunately, a lot of that got shut down. And my grandfather entered my life. In my 30s, I won't go into details because some of it's actually kind of dark, some of the energies I worked with, but I had it all the way along. For example, okay, so I know not everybody drinks. I love red wine, and my husband and I would be out on the town. And in fact, we've done this. We were in Vancouver, Canada. We went up there with friends, and they got to experience it. And I'm not sure how much they enjoyed it. But sometimes when we have a substance like that in our bodies, we lose our inhibitions. Oh my gosh, I love not having inhibitions anymore. But we lose our inhibitions, and we actually allow our true selves to come out. We would be walking down the street, and I would feel my energy pull me towards something, and I would just walk up to a woman. Always a woman, complete stranger, and just start speaking into her life. And so often the woman would look at me, she might be crying, she might say, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I needed to hear. Oh, I can't believe you just said that. Thank you so much. I would go on cruises. I've done it on cruises as well. So it was operating all along, but it wasn't until I got to my 30s that I started owning the stuff that happened as a kid, that I started truly operating in it. And I love it. I would work in energy for 10 hours every single day of the week. I love it so much because it's just, everything is energy, and energy is everything to me. It's so exciting. I love it. And we had that amazing experience, energy experience together.
Yeah, tell people about what did we do?
Oh, we went to the energy rocks on Laguna Beach, and it was if you can see my,
oh, there it is. She bought that in Laguna.
Yes, I bought that after. And it's just, there's certain places in the earth that have more of a connection to the energy of God, the energy of the universe, to the life force. And when you find them, you just, for me, it's just an inhalation. And so we did 2 rocks, right? And the first rock was very grounding and very magnetizing and very building and drawing. And I remember I couldn't even walk up the steps afterwards. I was so magnetized to it. And then the second, so we spent like half an hour there.
Yep.
And I know you guys were all, I had music in my ears. I had Post Malone.
She loves Post Malone.
There's my Post Malone Funko Pop. He's on my desk. I had Post Malone in my ears for half an hour, just completely lost. I had waves splashing on me. And then the second rock we went to was like totally different energy. It was this uplifting, levitating, just glorious energy. And at one stage, I thought I was levitating. It was so great. And then do you remember how like we were all kind of high?
Yes, it was. We were just
like,
filled.
Yes.
I felt like we were floating.
Yes. Just walking it off. It was amazing going shopping. It was such an incredible experience that we had together. I can't wait to repeat it. I'm going to repeat it.
Me too, except for
Yeah.
the Post Malone thing. But you know, it's so funny. But let's talk
Not for
about
me. I'll bring him with me again.
Oh, of course, but let's talk about tethering because we talked about tethering after the experience. So what we did is we went and sat on these rocks, which I've been. It's right. I've been to these rocks before. I mean, I haven't been sat on the rocks, and I'm scared of heights up until now.
Yes.
And so the first one, I'm like, I took pictures of them. I didn't want to go on the rock personally because on the first, I did want to go on the rock. I knew I would love to do it, but it was the first rock was taller. And you had to climb up on it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do that. But I'm like, oh my gosh, what are you? After I took their picture, I'm like, what is wrong with you? Get your butt over there and do this.
Get on the rock, woman.
Get on the rock. And it's so funny. And the rain had just stopped. It had been raining all day. And it's raining today too here in California, but it has not rained, it doesn't rain here very often. And the energy from the earth came in, right? Like, but I do feel like the first rock pulled us down, like was grounding us and rooting us in, right? And just centering us. I felt so centered there, right? And then the second rock, I just felt like it was just like rushing into me and just like empowering me, like just giving me like extra boost of energy. But let's talk about tethering because I'd never heard of that before. And we talked about tethering events or things to you. And so can you talk about and explain what tethering is and why?
Sure. So there's two things. I think what you're actually talking about is anchoring.
Anchoring, that's it.
Anchoring, yeah. So anchoring is a skill that we use in neurolinguistics. And it means that when you know, so your emotional brain does this naturally for you. For example, I can remember what I had for breakfast the day that I got married. Right?
Yeah.
Because your brain wakes up and says, this is an important day. Pay attention to everything and log it in your brain. I have no idea what I ate for breakfast the day before. Or the day after, right? And so our brain has this sensory anchoring skill in it anyway. So what we do is we capitalize it. And so when you are going somewhere like the energy rocks, you can create an anchor inside yourself, which means that you can revisit that experience anytime you want. So thank you, Post. I love your music. You're amazing. I used Post Malone to anchor that experience into my brain, which means that when I listen to certain Post songs now, I relive the experience. You anchor yourself to it, and it's actually not that hard to do. There's the zombie movie World War Z. Oh, I love that movie.
Is it good?
It has the most beautiful soundtrack. Just it's just Isolated Systems, I think it's by Muse, is probably the main song that I really, really love. And it's a really cool song. And I discovered this when two of my children, I had already graduated two of my children, so I only had two left to homeschool, so I didn't have enough work to do, and I got kind of bored, so I did some college classes. And so to keep the kids kind of out of my brain space while I was studying, I would put music in my ears, and I love World War Z soundtrack, so I would listen to that. And then when I did my online exam, I thought, oh, well, I'm working. I'll just have my habit. I put it back in. I put Muse back in my ears, Isolated System from World War Z, and discovered my thinking. I started remembering material, and I'm like, holy cow, this is kind of amazing. I did not understand neurolinguistics at the time. This is just something I discovered. And so then when I started developing more systems and writing more curriculum, whenever I had a creative block, I put World War Z in my ears, and the block I had would instantly go, and my brain would say, oh, we're in thinking in creative mode. Okay, click, And straight away I would go. It is an anchor I created for myself to get myself past any type of writing block, any type of creative block. It's really powerful, and anybody can do it. You can use an anchor for anything. I have Alexa in my kitchen. She's now an anchor to put on peaceful music so I never get stressed out when I'm cooking. Anybody can do it.
Isn't that smart?
Anchoring.
Anchoring. I loved it.
Yeah.
Okay, another question for you. So, what is a question I should ask you that I haven't asked you, that you know, something you would, that the people who are listening and watching would enjoy learning from you?
I would love you to ask me about my third child.
Ooh, I was wondering about that, if we should talk about that in my brain while I've been listening to you.
Yeah.
Laurette, can you tell me about your third child? And I think this is so important because so many people have children and relationships with children or.
Yeah. So I have 4 children. I had 2 boys and then a girl. And then I was not able to conceive after that. And so our youngest son is adopted. Given I homeschooled, we were independent private homeschoolers because I was writing almost all of my own curriculum, but we did team policy debates. We traveled the country a lot, but my daughter and I were very, very close. And I had this whole beautiful future planned, having facials together. I told you I love facials, right? Yeah. Having facials together, going on shopping trips together. Oh my gosh, I was going to fulfill my lifelong dream of having a daughter, and then that daughter having a daughter. So I had saved the clothes that my daughter wore from 1 year old, saved like all of the precious clothes, so I could say, your mummy wore this when she was a little girl. That was my everything in life. And then 2 years ago, my child informed me that they were, well, first they told me that they were gay, which I had no issue with, and then bisexual, no issue with that. Pansexual. Pansexual means that you do not identify gender at all in your partner. Like whatever stage of gender they are at, you just don't care. And then it was a little while after that that they informed me that they were non-binary trans male.
What does that mean?
Non-binary trans male. Well, let me give you the full description. AFAB, non-binary trans male. AFAB means AFAB, assigned female at birth. Non-binary means you reject the notion of gender altogether. So you can appear. It's not quite gender fluid. It's a little bit better than gender fluid. It's very similar, but it's a rejection. Trans means that you actually identify as the opposite gender of what you were assigned at birth. So AFAB, non-binary, trans male. And my whole future, this is actually the day that I discovered that judgments are useless and not helpful. My whole future collapsed in on me because every dream that I had died. And it had to die. It had to die in order for me to embrace an entirely new future. And trust me, this was not an easy process. I was heartbroken. I cried so much. Oh my gosh, I was lost. And my child said to me, they said to me, Mum, I know you have emotions about this. And so I have a unique relationship with my children. I know you have emotions about this. And let me tell you that your emotions are your business. And I don't want to experience them at all. I mean, what a beautiful thing for them to say to me. 20 at the time. Just a really amazing thing for them to say to me so that I understood where those boundaries were. And it was a few months after that when they told, so we had to change pronouns from she to they, them, which was really hard. It was really hard changing pronouns because when you're thinking about a memory of your child, you're thinking about them as female, but then no longer female now. And so the pronoun transition was extremely hard. And then came the day, it was my last bulimic episode ever, that they told me that they were rejecting their birth name and choosing a new name. And that was really hard because it was like, Laurette, your child does not exist anymore. This is now a new person that you need to discover all over again. And that has been a process for me. But you see, one of the issues was I had this idea in my head that the only way that I could have my future and be the person who I really wanted to be and feel all these amazing feelings was to have a daughter. Well, that's not true. I still have my child. It was a death of sorts, but a really weird death because my child was still here. And so now I actually have a free mum hugs t-shirt. It's something that parents do. They go to gay pride parades and they embrace members of the LGBTQ plus community who've been rejected by their families. I actually have just applied to become a crisis counsellor for the LGBTQ plus hotline because the rate of suicide is so high because people just simply don't understand. Judgment is not helpful. Every human needs to be seen and held and accepted, honored. Honored is a better word than accepted, honored for who they are at any stage in their journey in life, because it's what we all want for ourselves. And I'm so freaking proud of my child. I can't wait to see them on Christmas Day. I love them to pieces. I absolutely now celebrate every single part of their journey. But it's not something I get to talk about a lot. And so thank you for asking me that question, because I want people to understand more about the journey and the courage. Like people say, oh, they're just pretending to be male so they can win sports competitions. They're pretending female to win this, or they're pretending to be female so they can go into women's bathrooms. If you understood what people in this community go through, there is no way that they would deliberately choose to switch genders to gain an advantage. It is an incredibly painful journey that comes with a lot of bullying, a lot of rejection. My child has heard the neighbors say that they should die because of the lifestyle that they lead. And so I'm just, I have a lot of compassion actually for everybody, on the planet, but my heart is really pulled towards abuse survivors, towards people who have emotional eating, who have emotional trauma, and to the LGBTQ plus community. That's anybody with pain is who I'm called to, because I know that I'm here to heal. That's my joy in life. That's my joy. Yeah.
I have chills. It's so funny that, because I told you, like you asked me what we're going to talk about, and I don't have an agenda when I do these interviews. I go off my intuition, and then whatever you talk about, then I talk about off of that for every interview. And while we've been sitting here, because then I'm listening to you, but I'm also thinking, where do I want to go next, with this? And I was wondering, I wonder if we should talk about that, because I know we've talked about that. And I think that if you listen to my first podcast interview, it's called Born to Be Brave. The Born to Be Brave. I interviewed Dennis Schleicher, and he is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he's openly gay. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a book called Is He Nuts? Why Would an Openly Gay Man Join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? And I read the book. I didn't know him before. He ended up being a house guest of mine. This is how energy works. You can attract anyone into your life, anyone, because I read his book. And he shares his story because he came out as being gay in the 80s and was beat up in the bathroom at his school, but they didn't do anything about it, and they didn't support him, and they punished him, and he got in trouble. And he went on like Larry King. This is in high school. He went in on Larry King and Sally Jesse Raphael and all these talk shows to try and bring awareness to the LGBTQ plus was what we call it now, but to help bring awareness and to help with the suicide rate, with the mental health issues and the bullying, and to change and shape the way they're treated, and and the compassion. The word that comes to me is compassion, because God wants us to love everyone. We don't get to pick or choose. It doesn't say love so and so, right? Like when you read the Bible, it says love everyone.
Yeah.
As you love yourself. And people forget the part, love yourself too. A lot of people forget that part of the scripture. You got to love yourself. But we don't get to pick and choose. We're supposed to love everyone. And I just had chills I'm so glad you shared that, because I think you're going to make an ultimate world-class crisis counselor. And
thank you, darling.
And aren't you glad that you're processing and have that relationship still?
Oh, so grateful. We have in fact, I've got a new tattoo idea that I want to do, and so I always check all of my stuff with them. We're still very close. Yeah. It's an amazing relationship, and they are definitely intuitive as well. So I'm interested to see where they're actually known as an animal whisperer. They're a vet technician, and so I'm interested to see where that takes them in their future, because I know where my energy is taking me, and so I'm really interested to see that unfolding.
Animal whisperer. See,
yeah.
that's your get.
That's what they're like. Yeah, they but any time an animal comes into the vet that's angry, that's, because they're also quite short like me. They're taller than me, but they're still not very, they're like 5'5", I think, 5'4". But they are so good with animals. So good with animals. So I'm curious to see, how their life unfolds.
And look at it, we said the same word. Yeah. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because I just want this to be a place for courage, bravery, safety, love, and peace. And and if you're a parent that's processing a change that you're having a hard time grasping, and your child didn't turn out the way you thought your child was going to turn out. That's I don't talk about my Mason either very often. And when you give birth to a child, you have a lot of hopes and dreams for your children that aren't their hopes and dreams. And that's a lot of crap to put on your kid. And we do that, and we have to celebrate them. They might choose a path that maybe doesn't resonate with us at first. And the quicker we can get on board with loving them, no matter what, the better, because you can't have an impact on a person you don't have a relationship with. And I have had a tumultuous relationship with our son who struggled with addiction, and he has the best heart. He's so good with plants and animals. But what's interesting is I pray for him and fast for him and look for guidance on how to be a better parent to him. And everything I've ever learned, not everything, but so many of the life lessons and the person that I've been molded into and shaped into are because I am his mom. And he's taught me so much about not judging, being compassionate, having empathy, understanding, listening, releasing my expectations of what our relationship should look like. And it's interesting that, that's my favorite. One of my favorite sayings is, you cannot have impact on someone you do not have a relationship with. And if you're coming from judgment, you're not going to have a relationship with that person that's authentic, because they're not going to share with you.
That's so true. And it's not that judgments are bad, because that's judging them. Ironically, we can have judgments and just observe them. And there's actually a really simple process that I follow to just accept and embrace the judgment, but then acknowledge this is not going to be useful information for me. So thank you for trying to protect me.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm going to switch to something that's more helpful. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for trying to protect me, but I'm going to
Yeah.
switch to something that's more helpful.
More helpful, more useful. It's like if you think of the water coming down a river and it hits a rock. The water doesn't stand there with its hands on its hips and tell the rock off for being in its path and judge it for being a bad rock and messing with its flow, right?
Yeah.
It just goes around it, right? The
Mm-hmm.
water comes up to a bend. It doesn't try and go straight ahead. It just flows. It's more useful for me to flow this way. And that's what life becomes. This, I'm trying to go straight. Oh, this doesn't feel so good anymore. Well, let's go this way and see if this feels better. And it's just following this flow of energy that comes from deep within our spirit, deep within our core. And you hit on it before, Colleen. One of the key aspects is falling in love with yourself. I know this sounds kind of weird, but I am so in love with myself. My life is so delicious. And I can't believe I can say that after the decades I spent in the dark. But who would not want to just embrace everything that life has and just kind of see it unfold the way that it wants to unfold? Be the river, release yourself from the things that are no longer serving you, complete the parts of yourself. You can change a habit in one day, and one day you can change a habit. And it's not pushing it away, it's just being grateful for it, but then informing it it's complete and updating it. And there's so much out there that makes these things so complicated, and it just doesn't have to be. When we see ourselves with love and compassion and kindness changes everything. Like me saying, I've got nothing but kindness in my heart for my grandfather. I didn't even need to forgive him. It's a whole other story I won't go into, because once I saw him with kindness, there was no blame. There's no blame and no judgment. You don't need to forgive somebody when you don't blame them, when you see it in a different way. And feels so much better.
When you look in the mirror, do you talk nice to yourself now?
Oh yeah, I smile at myself. It's taken me a long time to get there. I see my energy when I look in the mirror. I got baggy eyelids when I get up in the morning and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that, you know. And I'm not very good at putting makeup on. Teresa's amazing at putting my makeup on.
We have that same thing.
Yeah, I'm not so good at it myself. Like, oh my gosh, I'm almost 54. I really should learn by now. But no, when I look in myself in the mirror now, I see my spirit. And I find it intoxicating. So, I see my face and I see my body and I see my hair, but when I look in my eyes, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so in love with the energy force that lives inside of me. And I just want to be able to express it more and more, because I know that and I love doing energy work on people. It just fires me up so much. And I know there's so many people who need that process, who it can change the trajectory of their life. It's just really yummy to do.
Yummy. Where can people find you?
I have a Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
It's called, it's kind of a long name. It's called Emotional Freedom, Women Connecting, Rising, and Healing Stories Together. They could also email me, Laurette Smith at outlook.com, or find me on Facebook. I don't know my Facebook name. Do you have show notes?
Yep, it'll all be in there. We'll put that in there too.
You can put my Facebook profile in the show notes. They can reach out. You can reach out to me on Messenger, anything that you want to talk about. My life is in service to the hurting people in this world. It's what I love most. It just brings me so much joy and energy and vibrancy, and it's such an honor to help bring other people out of darkness and help them see the light that exists inside of them the same way that I saw mine.
I would highly recommend that if anything's resonated here with you today, that you do reach out to Laurette, because I don't think you'll regret it. I literally did it just because I thought she was so cute in the group, and I thought, oh, I'll just go support her for a little bit and log in. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing class. It was just so good, and it's I'm so glad God brought us together, and
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I'm so glad that you are my friend, and then I know I'm going to see you again soon, and that we're going to go on the rocks. And
oh my gosh, I can't wait.
yeah, it's good. And then what was I going to say? If someone's listening and they're just hesitating about like letting go and taking action, what's your last word for them? Because a lot of people are like, oh yeah, I'm really inspired by her. I really should do, my life sucks. I'm bulimic, or I'm having a struggle with my child, or I'm having a struggle in my marriage, or I'm having, I'm a sexual abuse survivor. What would you just say to them? One last thing.
Just say, sweetheart, these skills that you've been using have been such a gift and so beautiful because they have helped you survive up until this point. But if you can take a moment now and just close your eyes and breathe deeply and just ask yourself gently and quietly, can I believe that there's more to me? Is there something inside of me that wants to come out, that wants to heal? I want you to just even imagine, see deep inside your stomach and imagine just a weeny, weeny little light in there. See it in your mind. And then almost like blowing up a balloon, let it grow and expand until it starts to gently and softly fill the very insides of your belly. And sit there breathing. I know sometimes you look at yourself and you don't see the hope in you. You don't see the beauty. You don't see the gloriousness. But I can tell you that it's there. I promise you it's there. And she is so desperate to find you. She's so desperate to live through you, this life force. She wants to give you bubbles in your chest, a giggle in your chest. She wants your brain to be at peace. And she wants you to heal because there is something that you've been put here to do. And you feel even an inkling of hope in your heart. I want you to put your hand on your heart and inhale into it and let it grow. Let it fill your being and start believing in that hope. Because I can promise you, I promise you with everything that is in me, if I can get through it, then you can too. I have a tattoo on the back of my neck that means infinite hope. And I will hold hope for you. I will hold your energy. Whatever darkness you're having, it is not too heavy for me to hold because the light that is inside of me is greater than any darkness that I could ever encounter. And that light that so desperately wants to glow inside of you is greater than any darkness in your life.
Thank you, gorgeous friend. I want to show them one more thing. If you guys loved Laurette, you got to get this book. It's called When Love Speaks.
So great.
What page are you on?
175.
She's on 175. Let's see here. Where's 175? So 175 toward the back. Right, here it is. Here's her story. Buy this book and read her story. She's amazing. All stories are amazing. You will love them and you will not be disappointed. You can give this gift to anybody, but isn't she amazing? Thank you for joining us, my beautiful friend. I'm going to have you back again. Maybe even when you come down, if we have time, we'll maybe do something in person if we have time.
Yay.
Anyway, thank you, gorgeous.